For the data project, there are actually at least two different categories of abstractions that I want to add to this project. One of those categories would be the category that would hold all of the classes that define the shape of my data. That would include classes like a restaurant class to hold restaurant information, but also in this project, I want to add some abstractions that represent the services or the components that I will use to access data. And since I have these two different categories, it would be nice to place those two different types of abstractions into two different namespaces, which in .NET and C# programming means I should use some folders to categorize my types. So let's add a folder. So right click, so add new folder. So let's name this folder models. Okay, these models represent my business objects or my domain model or the entities of or that informations essentially that I want to store in a database. We're not going to cover a specific style of programming here, like domain-driven development or task-driven development. Those are topics that are covered in some of my other courses or lectures. But I do want to store restaurant information in the database and query for restaurants to display restaurants of the home page. So I will need a class to represent a restaurant. Let's add a class to this folder and let's call it restaurant.cs. Add new item, class, call it restaurant.cs. So I have added the restaurant class. So I could have also right clicked and said that I just wanted to add a class here, and it could have given me a same thing. So this gives me a basic.cs class file with some common namespaces already included. So this is the namespace which is commonly included. It also gives me an internal class which I cannot use outside of this project. But since I will need to use this class in the web project, let me go ahead and add the public modifier to this class so I can use it outside of the odfood.data project. And now let's describe some of the attributes and some of the state that should be stored for each restaurant. Every restaurant will be stored in a SQL Server database. And SQL Server likes to give entities or each record that's in a table a primary key. So let's create a property using the prop snippet, which is prop. So, and I can see, just press tab to expand that into a auto-implemented property in Visual Studio. So I just need to type prop and hit tab, and then I can tab between the names and the type of this property. So let's call this property name or ID. So another property I want to add would be a string property that can hold the name of the restaurant. Now there's all sorts of interesting information that we could store about a restaurant. We could store the location, we could have relationship defined in our database. So every restaurant has a collection of employees, every restaurant has a collection of menus. There's the lunch menu, there's the dinner menu. We could use really build quite a sophisticated model, but for this course I'm going to keep things very simple. I'm going to give you all the concepts that just need to apply to keep adding more complexity into the application, but we're going to stick with a relatively simple definition for the restaurant. We'll store the ID and the name, and perhaps let's choose one other item. So let's write prop again and change it to a string, and it is going to be the name of the restaurant. So another thing I could add, which could be interesting, might be let's store the cuisine type of a restaurant. So I could add another string property and name that property cuisine. And this will represent a column in the database. So cuisine, and it can be a string. So this will represent a column in the database, and it will allow me pretty much free form text entry. You can enter anything that you want as a cuisine. But what if we wanted to restrict the possible values of cuisine? Well, one way just approach you can use to do that is to define an enum in C#. Enum in C#, let me repeat that. Let's do it. I'm going to right click on models folder again, and I want to add another item. So this, we are going to add a new type called the cuisine type. So cuisine type, okay, so we add the class, and this will generate an internal class, but I'm going to change this to a public enum instead. And then the members of our enum, let's start with something here. So restricted, so let's have an option named none. So this represents a restaurant that does not have a specific cuisine, or perhaps it's an unknown cuisine. And then let's just pick a few easy cuisine out of the hundreds of available cuisines in the world. Let's just say Italian, and there is Indian, there is French. Okay, let's fix the alignment. Okay, and if we come back to restaurants, let's go, there's an error right here. Maybe I have okay, I forgot to declare it public, so this class is represented inside. Okay, there, instead of this class I have given the class name cuisine type. So if we come back to our restaurant, this, we can now change the string as the cuisine type. Okay, and this will define the model that I want to use for a restaurant. It will define what I want to show on the screen as well as what I want to store in the database. So more on this type of model later in this course. So stay tuned.